Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated, first on 93 WIBC. Let's get right into the news. It really is a day of spies and espionage, whether we're talking about yet another Chinese espionage case in the state of California, or we're talking about the government of Pakistan. We're going to get into all of it. So without further ado, Attorney Bill Assaili of the United States Attorney's Office announced, quote, Arcadia Mayor Eileen Wang has been charged with violating 18 U.S. Code 951, acting in the United States as an illegal agent of the People's Republic of China. Wang appeared in federal court this afternoon for her arraignment. She agreed to plead guilty and resign from public office. I mean, just right off the top, right at the crack of the bat. She admitted to it. She accepted the plea deal. What was it for? Quote, Wang admitted to acting as a foreign agent from at least 2020 through 2022. At the direction of the People's Republic of China government, she coordinated with various individuals to promote communist Chinese interests by spreading pro-PRC propaganda in the United States. Wang faces a statutory maximum sentence of 10 years in federal prison. Now, put that aside for just a second, and that usually cases of just outright espionage and treason, given that she would be a citizen of the United States, you would think that this kind of treason, that's the news. Whether she admitted it or not, I don't know. What we sand the noose down a bit so it's softer. A treason, someone convicted of espionage, a spy, should get the noose. 10 years in federal prison is a little weird, considering that every other country around the world that isn't overrun like the United Kingdom is, every other country, whenever there is a case of caught espionage, that individual is given a spy's death. They're not acting under the Geneva Convention. Spies are excluded from the Geneva Convention. So this from the FBI, and some are saying, well, she was only pushing foreign propaganda. She really wasn't engaging in espionage. No, that is going to be a big 10-4. How about absolutely not? So this piece from the Los Angeles Times earlier this year said, quote, China allegedly tried to influence this politician. She says she's not going anywhere. Well, now, according to the FBI's, let's see here, Assistant Director Roman Rozovsky, FBI Counterintelligence and Espionage Division. She sure sounds kind of like espionage. Quote, by her own admission, Eileen Wang secretly served the interests of the Chinese government. Let this serve as a clear warning. Individuals who act on behalf of foreign governments to influence our political process will be identified, investigated, and brought to justice. And then a little statement about how it's very important to the FBI that we catch bad guys, especially foreign bad guys. Okay, now, what does this have to do with the mainstream media crew of things? I will remind you that while the Los Angeles Times was floating all of this stuff that, well, she said she's not going anywhere, what else was going on? Now, I have to make sure I preface this. This is reportedly a campaign advertisement that she released herself when she was running for city council in Arcadia, California in 2022. Again, she just now resigned as the mayor as part of this plea deal. I want you to again, I have to stress, we did not make this. This is hers, reportedly here, all right? I want you to see if you can kind of wager if there may have been signs that she was a foreign asset.
我是王爱玲，我是2022年 Arcadia 第3区市议员候选人。我将致力于为全体市民争取权益，努力提高企业信心，平衡预算，打击犯罪，不遗。
Now, this might be a little subtle. I don't know if you can tell because it's very, very expertly done. She's not speaking English. Huh? And those symbols on the screen. No. That's not stick figures doing a little emojis and vomiting. No. Those, that would be Mandarin, in fact. So I have some concerns, some questions, perhaps. A couple of pieces of advice, by the way, that maybe if you're running for an office here in the United States, because, I remember when Zoran Mamdani went out there and got out there and, kicked up the Indian music to 11 and then got out there and started speaking in Arabic or Farsi or Hindi and like making all of his big advertisements. Again, if the goal is to run for an American office, one might speak the American language. being a foreign asset. Just
请在11月8日投我一票，支持王安林竞选 Arcadia 第3区市议员。谢谢大家。Hello.
Now, I can't say this for a fact, but I'm pretty sure she once tried to sell me something over on Temu. The ad just kind of gives off that vibe. So, what is it actually that she had done? So, she ran a propaganda website. She collaborated with her then fiance, Yaoning Mike Soon, a Chinese national later convicted and sentenced to 4 years in prison for similar offenses. Wait a minute. You mean her fiance was already convicted and thrown away for collaborating with China as a Chinese national, and she's just now admitted to it? That sounds remarkably strange. I mean, it sure would be bizarre if, like, CBS News back in February might have reported that her fiance was already involved in all of this entire just cluster-filled mess. Oh, wait. They absolutely did. Here you go.
Rudabeh, this is such a strange and intriguing story. As you said,
oh, it's so strange. California's is such a stranger to Chinese espionage. Wow. Breaking, marrying your cousin jokes from Alabama. Oh my goodness. Amish from like the Amish parts of Pennsylvania. No way. Hot dogs out of New York. Oh my goodness. Quick, somebody call CNN.
The mayor of Arcadia linked to now a convicted Chinese spy. We tried to ask her some questions about the sentence, but she refused to answer. Arcadia Mayor Eileen Wang not taking questions about the sentencing of a convicted Chinese spy who she once referred to as her boyfriend and fiance. And
guys, that's a little more than link too. That's a little just more than there's a link. Oh, there's a link would be, I once, had coffee with this individual. A link would be, we worked at the same company together. A link was not every kiss begins with K commercials featuring the two of us, It's a little more than that. So they ran a propaganda website, which just, you guys aren't going to believe this. A propaganda website, which primarily disseminated Chinese government propaganda here in the United States. This site was called the U.S. News Center. Yeah, a site presented as a news outlet for Chinese Americans. In reality, according to the New York Post, it served as a vehicle for Beijing-directed content. So how do we know? Well, they received instructions from PRC handlers, including via a Chinese consul general. That would be a major diplomatic violation, by the way, if the Chinese consulate is giving her instructions. Yeah, that would be the big bad. Where are all the international law experts, by the way, on Middle Eastern affairs? I can't hear them. All of those international law, incredible, lawyers from their couches. I don't seem to hear them. That would, by the way, consulate, you're not allowed to engage in espionage. Diplomatic immunity, diplomatic packages, they're not supposed to contain military or espionage-related information. Now, again, day ending in Y. If you've ever studied the Cold War, you knew that every diplomatic packet, not to mention number stations on the radio galore, were directed to this exact nonsense. Now, moving forward here, the metrics, they reported back to Beijing a series of information pieces on articles like denying the genocide and forced labor in Xinjiang. For example, posting a piece claiming, quote, "There is no genocide in Xinjiang. There's no war in Ba Sing Se. There's no such thing as forced labor." Oh, don't you know, in a communist country, all the posters show everyone smiling when the children return to the mines. They'd whistle, the tune from Snow White, but that's dirty capitalist propaganda from those American pigs. So the funny thing is, they had received little head pats from their handlers in Beijing, like, "So fast, thank you everyone," or "Thank you leader," from handlers. So excellent, just excellent stuff. Now there was a broader influence effort soon, and by extension the network involving Wang aimed to cultivate her as a rising political figure. Wow. From city council to mayor. How about that? Gee, in a city with large Chinese American population. This included a campaign where Sun would be the treasurer and advisor to advance pro-Beijing interests in local U.S. politics, such as countering groups like Falun Gong or Taiwanese independent supporters. In other words, American citizens here who they didn't like, the Chinese wanted to operate. Radio crew will send you guys over to the commercial break. Try not to do any Chinese espionage while we're gone. Apparently, we have to remind people of this. It's the Tony Kinnett cast. We'll continue on the live stream. All right, well, they're on their commercial break. Don't just be really hard on groups like the LA Times for dragging their feet to report this. Chinese espionage, even though it is the most common form of espionage caught in the United States, I mean, China-linked covert cyber networks targeting infrastructure in April of 2026. Chinese cyber capabilities in the United States, reports from the Dutch military intelligence, AI model extraction, bioterrorism that we reported on earlier this year, where there was a Hoosier along with another Chinese national that tried to escape via Los Angeles International, and then another case of a Chinese spy trying to escape from Los Angeles International, and then a Chinese influencer that was on the run from the NSA who also tried to escape from Los Angeles International. Not to mention Eric Swalwell and Fang Fang Bang Bang. All right. So, aside from these particular cases of espionage, what is it that we were seeing kind of on the broader scale, not just with China, but with their secondary mouthpieces here? Well, this brings us over to Pakistan. So, first of all, I really do want to point out, if we're going to talk about the Middle Eastern side of things, Pakistan is under significant fire because it has been discovered via a report from CBS that Pakistan has been harboring Iranian military aircraft, including an RC-130 reconnaissance plane, to shelter at Nur Khan Air Base after the ceasefire announcement. Now, it doesn't take a genius to ask why this would be. If Iran can kind of shelter the last couple of biplanes, the F-14 that Tom Cruise is going to steal in the next Top Gun movie, and that one pedal helicopter, they're going to shelter that away. They don't want the U.S., they don't want Israel, they don't want Gulf partners like the UAE to strike it. They need a friendly power in the world. And there really is no friendly power left in the world for Iran. The United States is already all over Iraq. Afghanistan isn't really a safe place for them. So they go to the Chinese mouthpiece in the region, Pakistan. Now, Pakistan and the U.S. have a very strange diplomatic and intelligence sharing relationship, and for a couple of reasons. But first and foremost, what you really should understand is that while Pakistan and the United States share some intelligence data, they act as China's... Russia had Cuba, China has Pakistan. All right, so the Chinese use Pakistan to advocate its interests on the United States stage and through several diplomatic ties in the Middle East. So Russia was never famously able to make headway into the Middle East, famously retreating from Afghanistan in the 80s. So China didn't want to do this. And the only diplomatic connection that China had was Albania. And so they needed something else. They started pumping a ton of money, this should sound very familiar, into Pakistan for some Belt and Road Initiative style stuff. And that is Pakistan that has been calling for the ceasefire on behalf of Iran. So why is that interesting? Because Qatar's not going to do it anymore. Because Qatar has kicked out all of the Hamas and Hezbollah leadership from the country after Iran threw a bunch of missiles at it. But Iran has not thrown any missiles at Pakistan, despite the United States having a substantial presence in the country. So Pakistan, which has promised, oh, we're just good friends and Trump is so great and wonderful and oh, everything is amazing and we're not doing anything wrong, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, ding. It turns out, yeah, they've been harboring aircraft for the Iranian military. And that is a problem indeed. Now, it's been an open secret. For example, Senator Lindsey Graham, who everyone really wants to rush to as soon as there's foreign policy news, because those who are on the populist side think that Lindsey Graham is the neocon secret mastermind of foreign policy. And that's not the case. You know, just as much as Marjorie Taylor Greene's not running things on the populist side of the aisle, it's a little much. But he says if this reporting is accurate, it would require a complete reevaluation of the role Pakistan is playing as a mediator between Iran, the United States, and other parties. Yeah, that's correct there, Einstein. Well done. We should definitely be reevaluating relationships. Also, maybe the president of the United States shouldn't be going over to Beijing later this week. But we're going to bring the radio crew back from commercial. We have way more news to talk about, including dunking on the Wall Street Journal. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Don't go anywhere.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Let's get into a little bit of the kind of media reporting in the Middle East, because you haven't heard a lot about the massive oil spill off of Kharg Island. The IRGC is struggling to keep people working because there's no money, there's no food. If you want an analogy here, if you can think back to, of all things, Disney's Lion King, there's a moment when Scar demands why the lionesses aren't hunting anymore. And she says, Scar, there's no food. The herds have moved on. There's no water. There's nothing. I'm tired. And then he just says, well, she's not working hard enough or fast enough. That's essentially how the IRGC is handling things right now inside Iran. There's no money. There's none. There's no food to go around. And the IRGC is struggling to maintain control in a couple of places. Over the weekend, a piece of news broke that there was an Israeli and U.S. linked base in far eastern Iraq, almost into western Iran, that the United States and Israel were using to help facilitate gun running and other intelligence for the Kurds. Now, if you've watched this show for longer than 5 minutes, you'll know that I have been alluding to that without openly saying it for a good 2 months, have I not? Have I not been saying there has been gun running going on? It's just, it takes a hot minute. The President of the United States has made this case a couple of different times. I give you Exhibit A.
The level of ferocity for protest, the people are watching it. They want to go out on the streets. They have no weapons. They have no guns. We thought the Kurds were going to give us weapons, but the Kurds disappointed us. The Kurds take. They have a great reputation in Congress. Congress says, oh, they fight so hard. No, they fight hard when they get paid. So I'm very disappointed in the Kurds, but they were given. I said it wasn't going to work, by the way. I just have to say it. I disagreed with what they did. They gave it. I said, they'll never get there. And I was right. I like to be right. In this case, too bad. But we sent some guns with ammunition. And they were supposed to be delivered, but they kept it. I said, they're going to keep it. But what do I know?
Now, I remember making it quite clear to all of you as well that we weren't quite sure, because the gun running was taking a little while, and we were doing the gun running through the Kurds. And the Kurds, who also need to arm up and also have been screwed over by the United States several times in a row, they might take some of the guns. So that would be one fat. But in case you were wondering, today it's not just that, it's...
Answer there, the Daily Double.
Okay, boys and girls, there is a brand new breaking super duper, wow, get the breaker up there, wow, breaking report from the Wall Street Journal. I can't believe it. It's incredible. It's amazing. Get the kids in here. Oh man, the UAE, according to the Wall Street Journal, this after freaking noon, the UAE has been secretly carrying out attacks on Iran. Now again, if this is your first time over here at the Tony Kinnett Cast, you can get this news that the Wall Street Journal is claiming is breaking exactly 1 month ago. In fact, over a month ago. As you may recall, on April the 8th, our entire headline was breaking: the United Arab Emirates launched a surprise attack against the Iranian regime, a retaliation for throwing a lot of crap at, for example, their Fujairah port. Now, if you really want the inside track, because this isn't in the Wall Street Journal, and it'll take them a month to get there, I will let you in on a little secret. This is part of the deal. This is part of the deal between the United States and the UAE. If the Israelis have Iron Dome, and they're going to focus on the Mediterranean, and the United States is going to make UAE the new Israel in this case. The red, white, and blue dome that Secretary of War Pete Hegseth has alluded to. UAE gets to break from OPEC, gives the United States very special deal on oil to lower gas prices in Q2 and Q3. There you go. There's the crystal ball. The UAE is going to give the United States oodles, canoodles, and toaster strudels of oil at a reduced rate. Later on in the year, that's one of the things that's going to plummet gas prices. Just so that you know, when all of the other conservative and liberal hosts are out there bragging about it, I want it to be clear that here, on May the 11th, in the year of our Lord, 2026, I'm making that clear. That's part of the deal. The UAE didn't like Iran throwing a bunch of crap over. And so all of a sudden, on April the 8th, we saw these Mirage fighter jets that were cruising over the Strait of Hormuz and struck a couple of islands and the wonderful tiki happy hut of a couple of the IRGC. And people were out, I don't know, who could it be? Wow, I have no idea. You can't, Tony, get out there and say it's the UAE. And I remembered saying to you, but guys, see, this is kind of funny. There are only 2 countries in that part of the world at all that operate with the Mirage fighter jet. Hold on, I'm going to pull up this little Iranian, or this Wall Street Journal article. Let's see here. Oh, the Mirage fighter jets carrying out numerous strikes on surveillance networks in Iran. Huh. Cool. I said the only 2 countries that operate those would be the UAE and also France. And you and I both know that France is about as useful as a flat doorstop. So that wasn't going to do anything. So yes, in fact, here we were. All right, again, get the jar. I will move on before I bore you to death with me, dancing on top of yet another reason you should tune into the Tony Kinnett Cast scoreboard. That said, let's talk about some other major news. The President of the United States, again, talking about getting rid of the ceasefire deal. The Iranians, there are 14-point plans and 10-point plans and 7-point plans. It's incredible. I mean, it's just diplomacy that is just shoving your points into a wooden catapult. Pull the lever, Kronk, and then it flies toward the other country just for the other country to say, I'm not interested. Now, more Iranian officials from diverse places are coming to the forefront and are making the case, well, actually, for the first time, I think that Iran really has the upper hand here. No, they don't. They absolutely do not. By the way, again, the reason you know that the Iranians are really struggling on the IRGC side, if every other day a different official is coming forward to issue a statement, things are not going well. When things are going well, it's the same leader 24/7, the same time it's all Trump, baby. That kind of a thing. So, the President of the United States on this particular deal, here you go, the man himself, talking about the deal that kind of sucks. Donald Trump, go.
For the time being, the ceasefire remains in place?
It's unbelievably weak, I would say. I would call it the weakest right now. After reading that piece of garbage they sent us, I didn't even finish reading it. They said, I'm not going to waste my time reading it. I would say it's one of the weakest right now. It's on life support. They understand. These are all medical people. Dr. Oz, life support is not a good thing. Do you agree?
That's very President Trump there. So that's the situation in the Middle East. There's a couple of other bits and bobs that we might get to kind of on the bonus tonus side of the show after the broadcast hour. But on other news, because there really is quite a lot on the news side of things, the Supreme Court of the United States delivering another major ruling today, this time on redistricting in Alabama. There was a court order that the Alabama state government had to leave in racially gerrymandered districts. So that was one of the cases we expected the Supreme Court of the United States to rule on, 6-3. You know what lines those were written on, and you know what implements were writing those. You have Clarence Thomas, Justice John Roberts, Amy Coney Barrett, Brett Kavanaugh, Neil Gorsuch, Samuel the heavyweight Alito, all writing in cursive with pens. Then you had Ketanji Brown Jackson, fisting a Crayola onto the paper like it's the second day of kindergarten. 6-3 thing says, no, you can't racially segregate districts. And again, not unexpected. A couple of outlets are running this as the biggest news ever. We've been looking forward to this, and we have something a little special for you this evening. A former representative from Louisiana's 6th, former Representative Graves, to talk about 2 things you've been asking about. Number 1, what is this stuff going to look like in Louisiana? And number 2, on the economic side, what the heck is going to happen to both the TSA and aviation and Spirit Airlines, because he used to chair the aviation subcommittee. We've got a ton of stuff for you this evening. It's like a power-packed, jam-packed super show. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast Radio. You scamper off to the commercial break. We're going to continue on the live stream where there's no commercials. There's just streams. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Man, I'm on one this evening. All right, let's talk about some other Supreme Court stuff. This time, Pennsylvania. I told you, Pennsylvania is the place where you need to watch everything in this country matters in Pennsylvania. We've had on guests that have said it. I've pointed out Senator Dave McCormick, Republican, Senator John Fetterman, Democrat. As long as they are holding unified, bipartisan kind of rallies and talking about the same cultural stuff, it is a good thing for the country, and it is a bellwether point of cultural importance for the midterms and beyond. And the latest expression of one of the reasons you should be keeping an eye on Pennsylvania Supreme Court Justice David Wett, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that name correctly, that's W-E-C-H-T, but one of the reasons you absolutely do not watch the Tony Kinnett cast is for me to pronounce names correctly. Supreme Court Justice David Wett of Pennsylvania, elected as a Democrat in 2015, says he is no longer registered with any political party because, quote, Jew hatred is now disturbingly common in the Democratic Party. And of course, he is absolutely correct. It has become their core platform. One of the people we're going to talk about in a second, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she is in hot water because in her "Please Give Me Attention" run for the presidency in 2028, AOC, she's all out here trying to refurbish her image because everyone's talking about the Zoran Mamdanis and the Los Angeles mayoral race and the crazy commie mayor up in Seattle and the Chinese mayor in California. Those are where the new hip happening stars. Even James Tallarico has a hot streak going with all of those ex-evangelicals with a lack of testosterone. So what's AOC going to do? Well, she got out there and tried to talk foreign policy again. You remember that didn't go so well in Munich. Well, Mehdi Hasan, over from the MS Now crowd, is trying to defend her against the rabid youths of the left because instead of referring to people in Gaza as Gazans, or excuse me, instead of referring to them as Palestinians, she referred to them as Gazans. And so all of the Free Palestine chain themselves to the inside of garbage truck crew is angry at AOC because she's not far enough to the left. That's quite a problem. So when you have Pennsylvania Supreme Court Justice David Wett saying, hey, look, I'm leaving the Democrat Party because this entire party is just about Jew hatred, that's very true. Now, I told you guys that when I was leaving Washington after the WHCA dinner that didn't go according to plan, that I had a chance to actually meet John Fetterman in the Reagan International Airport. And he was standing off to the side waiting on some of his staff to arrive. And I got to stand and chat with him for a second, introduce myself, say hello from all of you, of course, to Senator Betterman, and ask what he thought about the culture of his party. And he said he's worried about it. He says there are a lot of people in his party, kind of a source, dude, trust me, but here's what he said to me, that don't agree with a lot of this social direction of the party, but they're too afraid to speak out. But they definitely, deep down in their core, boy, they really know that some of this stuff is bad. The Jew hatred, the white hatred, the Asian hatred, that's really, really bad. They know it. They're not going to say it, but they know it. Well, he released a statement today, again, on a Pennsylvania Supreme Court justice leaving the Democrat Party. He says, quote, I know David and his legendary father, Cyril. As I've affirmed, I am not changing my party, but I fully understand David's personal choice. What does this mean for the House and the Senate race? Because a lot of things are changing. The Supreme Court of the United States ruling on redistricting, the Virginia gerrymandering getting chucked out and stomped on. So Republicans keeping the Senate, which has nothing to do with gerrymandering of any sort, it is now over 50% again and climbing, over on the betting odds markets. I got to bring the radio crew back in from commercial. I'm over time. Excuse me. It's the Tony Kinnett cast. Don't go anywhere.
This is the Tony Kinnett cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett cast, where the tide is turning. Not according to me, but according to the polls. Now, I've been telling you for a while, and I promise the point of tonight's show is not just to say, hey, remember when I was right? But I've been saying for quite a while, including to some of your questions, who said, Tony, you've been talking about how the generic polls have Republicans getting closer to Democrats, and I'm just not seeing it. And then we saw polls in which Republicans were dead even with the Senate. And I also don't really care for telling you, oh, things are changing because people on Polymarket or Kalshi or, sports books for politics are leaning one way or the other. I know a lot of you disagree with me. That's totally fine. I hear you. However, as far as right now on the betting markets are concerned, public sentiment believes that Republicans are going to retain control of the House. Graham Plattner is floundering in Maine. He is not doing very, very well. Now, Susan Collins doesn't just have an infinite lead to run, skip, and hop and jump forever. And one might think that Senate Majority Leader John Thune would leverage support for getting Susan Collins over the finish line against Graham Plattner by saying, well, you need to come out and endorse getting rid of the filibuster to pass the Save America Act. But I doubt we're actually going to see that happen because Senator John Thune is essentially just on the Senate floor playing yesterday's greatest hits. And by the way, when I say he's out there playing yesterday's greatest hits, I'm not joking. Here he is out with a statement from today saying, you know who's bad? Those Democrats, because they tried to block immigration enforcement funding.
My Democrat colleagues refused to provide a single dollar for the men and women who protect our borders. They refused to provide a single dollar for the men and women who take dangerous criminal illegal aliens off of our streets.
Now, is the man right? Yes, absolutely. Nope, sorry, wrong. He's absolutely correct. Is he going to make any headway with this? Absolutely not. Nope. He's right. He is true. By the way, he's correct. Democrats are refusing to fund Border Patrol. Democrats are refusing to fund those who do keep criminals off the streets. We have a plethora of stories every night that I don't even get the chance to get to. That producer Jen collates every day the cases of illegal immigrant crime in this country and it being rounded up. And what she doesn't know is that I'm actually taking a lot of these from the document and adding them to kind of a master list of all of the cases of these crimes being reported on, because we love receipts over here at TKC. And we will get to a lot of those stories, though they do bring us grief, because they have to continually arrest those who are not just operating in foreign influence at the high levels of espionage, but at the low levels of chaos, murder, and fear-mongering, not to mention drug and human trafficking. It is true when Thune gets out there and says Senate Democrats are trying to block immigration enforcement. Here's the thing. By the way, I do tell this to those who I have on the show who are on the conservative side of the aisle. Guys, my audience already likely agrees with you on a lot of the stuff you're going to say. So cut a lot of the telling us the things that we already know and get to the things that we don't. Thune's not doing this. Simply going and saying, hey, you guys remember the Democrats? Yeah, they're bad. Yeah, that's not really going to impress a whole lot of people. It's not. Just reminding me of things that you've always said isn't going to fix things. Case in point, over on the left side of the aisle, Hakeem Jeffries. So the Democrats, in order to pull out of, by the way, House numbers are still below 50% for odds of Republicans keeping the House. But that is climbing. You have more and more people betting that Republicans are going to keep the House. Nothing is set in stone yet. Some of that is going to come to 2 out of 3 Americans not really understanding what's going on in the Middle East. And once that is finished, then that'll solidify. That's how that always works. But the Democrats have 3 plans for right now. They see the tide turning. They don't like it. Here are their 3 plans. Number 1, Hakeem Jeffries is doing John Thune in reverse. He's calling all Republicans super duper bad. So from Hakeem Jeffries today, there is nothing that extremists can do to gerrymander away the reality of their failed record. The Republican economy is a disaster for working class Americans. Dude, you have to pitch something instead. Going out there and saying, guys, this is bad, and then they expect everybody. Guys, that's not how that works. People aren't impressed by this. All right? It's not a speech at the Oscars in 2003. All right? This isn't Miss America going out there and going, I would like world peace in the Iraq. Like, no. Guys, need a little something more here. This isn't just limited to print media and tweets. You can also find this junk over when he hits the TV routes.
In a period of time, we do have these structural problems that need to be addressed.
So Hakeem Jeffries, again, is being asked, what are the Democrats going to do? So he gets out there and says, we need to enshrine into law racial gerrymandering. Racial segregation, we need to bring that back, make it a part of the law. And we've given it a fancy civil rights leader name that no one in American history realistically knows. We've given it a nice coat of spray paint to make it sound cool. And then, depending on who the SPLC is funding, they're going to advocate for it. That's the plan, Bob.
We've got to, for instance, make sure we pass the John Robert Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act so we can end the era of voter suppression in the United States of America once and for all. We have to end Citizens United, dramatically reform our campaign finance laws to stop the ability of these deep-pocketed special interests to intervene. And we are going to have to explore massive judicial reform, state by state, and at the federal level, and everything should be on the table as far as I'm concerned.
Interesting. So the other side of the pitch that we're making is that we need to reform the judicial system, which is curious. There is a clip of Chuck Schumer that I always have saved in a folder ready to go, where Chuck Schumer at the beginning of the Trump administration came out and said, hey, you guys don't need to worry. We packed the courts with a bunch of activists who are going to rule based on their feelings instead of the rule of law.
There are those who believe that we are in real time living through an assault on the constitutional order. Do you believe that we are in a constitutional crisis right now?
Yes, our democracy is at risk because Donald Trump shows that he wishes to violate the laws in many, many different ways. The good news here is we did put 235 judges, progressive judges not under the control of Trump last year on the bench, and they are ruling against Trump time after time after time.
Now, some of those judges that he's bragging about have since ruled against Democrats on things like this gerrymandering situation. I will remind you that it is Mark Warner, senator from Virginia, who is the guy who appointed the man who wrote the decision against Virginia's Democrat gerrymandering electric boogaloo. So, I mean, when you get out there and say, well, we just need to rig the courts even further, I really don't think that's going to fit. He's also out there calling every single Republican effort is a secret dark money pack. Again, I just don't think that people are going to believe you. So that's not going to work. Okay. That's plan number one. Plan number two is why is Donald Trump so obsessed with me? Not joking. That is, in fact, plan number two. Chuck Schumer is posting, Donald Trump had another meltdown about me yesterday. Why? His war is failing. His tariffs have led to skyrocketing prices. His poll numbers are plummeting. We must not let him intimidate voters at the polls in November. His incoherent rants do not faze us. Okay. Let's assume for a second that there is the average American who is listening to Donald Trump. Is there really a single American who has heard Donald Trump talk? When he's out there, he's in front of the crowd saying, hey, everyone, it's Donald Trump. I'm telling you, we're going to make America great again. Who hasn't heard him before and just now goes, hey, I think that rant's kind of incoherent. I
didn't like any of that.
That kind of a thing? No, Jan. Everyone's already decided what they think about Donald Trump. You have to bring something new to the table, and they shall. It's time for AOC yet again. So like Kamala Harris, every time we trotted her out in front of the American people, everyone kind of sneered and said, and then they're, time for a new look at Kamala Harris, until she was the head of the ticket. This is AOC. AOC trots out in front of the American people. And everyone's like, wow, she's so visionary and cool. She's like Bernie Sanders, but she's Latina and she's got the big booty and she's hot and I like her. I mean, that's the kind of the memes that run about AOC. She's hot and she's young and she's socialist. Let's go. And she's so smart. No, because then about a week after, everyone starts going, have you heard about AOC? You heard about her? Then she gets out and says something incredibly stupid. Like being asked about Ukraine and having no idea at all what's going on. Or being asked about industry and telling us that an accounting firm from Wisconsin is secretly responsible for setting the Cleveland River on fire. That kind of crap. Well, she's back and she's here again. This time, we're going to try a different angle. We've tried the socialist thing. So now we're going to get down into the churches of the southern United States and we're going to preach. AOC. She's up at the pulpit at Raphael Warnock's church. Here you go. You want a sermon on humanity that would make the Apostle Paul stab himself in the leg with scissors? You got it.
We are not divided by state. We are united by our humanity and common citizenship.
No, we are in fact divided by the state. We are divided by state federally regarding federalism. That is a very important fact. Radio crew, we're going to send you over to the commercial break. Even if we be separated by state, we will be united in citizenship. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. We'll continue on the live stream.
Because no man can grant us our humanity. No law can erase it. No king, no system, and no president can strip it away, Ebenezer.
Okay, and no president can strip it away. No one can rip it away from you. Something about going down south makes Democrats get out the code switching. Like Jasmine Crockett, who pulls out a different accent every single time that she's on stage. But again, losing her Senate primary, that's, another topic for another time here.
Because it is not given by man, it is ordained by God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. Sure, sweetie. Okay, only some of those rights. Only some of them. Well, free speech, Second Amendment? Nah, no, not those. No. Absolutely not. Now, here's where she starts getting herself into some hot water. She's doing all the interviews. She's going around. She's getting herself into a little bit of trouble.
The law is with.
So she begins by saying things like, states like Tennessee are trying to strip black people of their citizenship or their humanity or whatever.
When you are seeing states like Tennessee want to wipe out every black representative on the map in these states.
Now, you may notice the person on the screen that shows up next to her, that's Representative Cohen, who is not black. The guy running, or I should say, the lady running against him, the gentle lady from the state of Tennessee, is a black woman. So if Republicans are trying to get rid of like black representatives or whatever right now, they're probably doing the worst job on planet Earth.
We have an obligation as Americans to stand with black Americans and communities whose representation is being disenfranchised.
That's true. And so instead, let's not, district slice and dice based on race, and let's just find the right person to represent everybody in the community. Because by the way, if you're a white person living in a black majority area, you have just as much right to be represented as your neighbor. You have just as much right to be represented as the lady across the street, regardless of the color she is. And by the way, and as though this needed to be said, because of course you guys know this quite well, if a black person is living in a majority white area, they have just as much right to be represented as the white person or the Asian person or the most likely the mutt of all different kind of mixed backgrounds. So again, incredible, beautiful from AOC. In case you think I'm just making a much ado about nothing, you say, well, where is it that she's actually trying to get out there and give herself a new face here? Well,
they assume that my ambition is a title or a seat. My ambition is way bigger than that. My ambition is to change this country. Presidents come and go.
Boo. That's so gay. My ambition is not a title. My ambition is to change the country.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Yeah, that's real special. Now, again, as I've said earlier, people like Mehdi Hassan are over on social media trying to shield her from all of the youths who say she's not anti-Semitic enough, which, LOL. But what's really going to sink AOC, yet again, as we've said before, is when she gets out there and says things like she did last week, which is that you can't earn $1 billion. And people said, you're really stupid and retarded. And then she had to come out and go, well, actually, you can make it, but you can't earn it. But you can earn, but you can't make. Airbnbs are bad. There you go. That's their heavyweight. That's the plan. So let's get into this redistricting and how it works. You're really going to enjoy it. There's some good stuff. And also, what the heck's going to happen to Spirit Airlines? Oh, yeah. We got a great one coming up for you. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
The Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Good to be joined by former Louisiana Representative Garrett Graves. A lot of stuff going on. I know we've got open primary, jungle primary stuff. I know that we've got the Supreme Court decision. What on earth is going on down in Louisiana?
Oh, there's an awful lot going on in Louisiana. Years ago, really prompted by a court, state legislature that was a supermajority Republican decided to draw new maps for our congressional districts. They went from a 5-1, 5 Republicans and 1 Democrat, to a 4-2, 4 Republicans and 2 majority-minority Democrat districts. And the Supreme Court recently threw that out. Now, what's most interesting is the way that they threw it out. They came in and they said that the district was drawn, this new district was drawn primarily for race. And they actually cited the Voting Rights Act, which was designed to protect minority participation in voting, as actually being unconstitutional or in conflict with the Constitution that says that effectively everyone's equal. And so what started out as a really narrow decision on Louisiana alone has resulted in pretty substantial repercussions out of the Supreme Court that largely dilutes the role of the Voting Rights Act or how you consider race when drawing congressional districts.
So let's dive into a couple of things that obviously come out of this. There's a huge primary fight that's going on now. There's things that are being delayed. There's a question as to whether an open primary system, jungle primary system is best. Give me your unfiltered, unadulterated opinion here. I want to know what it is you think is best for those in Louisiana.
Yeah, well, look, talk about what's best. First of all, like, let's get these maps done, get them over with. You just totally threw a race into complete uncertainty right now by pausing the congressional race because of the Supreme Court decision. So look, closed primaries, which is what most Americans are used to, is a situation where each party, Republican and Democrat, hold their respective races and nominate a candidate. But let me back up just a minute. Look, when we had the Boston Tea Party in this country and decided we wanted to have our own form of government, no longer tied to the throne back in the British throne, we wanted to be represented. And so you think for just a minute what closed primaries does. It actually takes only certain sectors of the voters and allows them to choose who their nominee is going to be. If you think about the true principles of democracy, you think about free markets, and you think that people should be smart enough to vote for who they want to vote for. And so an open primary system allows everyone to run against everyone. It allows voters to go ahead and decide who they're going to vote for, irrespective of parties. To me, that's what free markets are. That's what democracy is. And closed primaries, I think, distort that and further empower the political parties. And look, I'll tell you, I'm a conservative, and I'll fight for those conservative values till my death. I believe in them. I believe that there's proof, there's evidence that they're successful and the right strategy in most cases. But if I also think about conservative values, I think about democracy and I think about freedom. I don't need a political party telling me who my candidates can be. I just think it's wrong. So in Louisiana, after 50 years of having an open primary system that I would argue has been pretty successful, first state in the country that has both the Speaker of the House and the Majority Leader, we now have decided to disrupt that, go to a closed primary, only to have the Supreme Court decision flip it back to an open primary. But bottom line is, I think that the more that we can give voters freedom of choice in terms of who it is their candidates are, who they can vote for, I think you're going to see more functional government, less polarization. And I think that at the end of the day, it's going to represent voters much better than under a closed primary system.
So one of the flip arguments, and it doesn't quite translate over because different kinds of open primaries function with slightly different connotation in different parts of the country. So for example, here in my home state of Indiana, you have anyone can go vote in a primary, but there's also no gatekeeping. Is like I can go sign up to vote for the Democratic primary and flip things over on if I think one candidate is better than another. And it creates some kind of subterfuge shenanigans. And that doesn't sound like the true open primary system that you're talking about being kind of like a jungle primary system that's being instituted in Louisiana, or that's currently giving all of the Democrats in California a good case of the hives.
Well, so let's play this out. If you're under a closed primary system, you could simply change your voter affiliation and go out there and try and get a bad candidate on the other side to proceed to the general election. So I mean, those types of shenanigans could be utilized under, or strategies could be utilized under any system. And one thing you have to keep in mind, we do have one citizen, one vote. So if you've decided to theoretically waste your vote by trying to push a candidate that you would like to see lose in the general, then that's your prerogative. But under a jungle or an open primary system, you simply are in a situation where you are not limited to who's on your menu, and you can decide who you want to vote for. Keep in mind, if you've decided to go this route where you're going to pull shenanigans, if you've chosen the Democrat ballot and you're really a Republican or vice versa, you are stuck with that entire ballot. And so you may be doing it for one candidate, but you're stuck with that whole Democrat or that whole Republican ballot. And so it really is, those types of shenanigans, I think, are just silly. Any system's going to have ways to try and game it. But I think it's certainly a free market approach is doing an open primary, and it's been wildly successful. And I think it treats voters as being as smart as they truly are.
I think that there's also a good case to be made here that you have a lot of people hoist on their own petard. So a lot of people who will get in and try some of those unsavory shenanigans, as we've called them, will often find that, yes, once they have locked themselves into a ballot, once they have gotten themselves in one particular route, that they end up finding that they don't enjoy the particular taste of their own medicine. We're seeing this at the federal court level. We're seeing this at the Supreme Court level. We're seeing this with gerrymandering maps. There is a little bit of the regret. I got to speak to, of all people, a Virginia Democrat state representative who actually got to in kind of a candid conversation with me and said, I wish we'd never started any of this. And I said, how about that?
I agree. I agree that none of this should have been started. And you know, Tony, look, I served in Congress for 10 years, and you think for just a minute about, you know, I'll go back, Boston Tea Party, why we founded this country in our own form of government. We did it because we wanted to be represented. But think about a scenario where during half of the campaign, I am only trying to be attractive to one set of voters and effectively trying to ostracize the other. To me, that's not representation. That's not democracy. And one thing that I'm really, really proud of our team on, in the 10 years that we served in Congress, we actually increased our vote return each time to where in our last election, we had nearly 81% of the vote. So think about that. 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. I could go out there and try and be attractive to every single voter, and not ostracize or isolate certain folks. To me, that's what we sacrificed to create this country for. And I think it's a much better representational system. I think it could help to deflate, as I mentioned earlier, some of the polarization in politics. And while I may absolutely grab onto whatever someone on one side or the other may be saying, at the end of the day, if Congress isn't doing anything because they're stuck and completely dysfunctional, what are we getting? We're getting a bunch of people yelling at each other without ever actually moving forward.
You can't ask me. This is so for our show, I have spent the last several months ranting and raving over that exact thing. If Congress isn't doing anything, I don't want to hear it. Throw out the Congress. Before we go, I do want to ask two things that weren't on the docket. But again, what a lot of people don't know is that you chaired the aviation subcommittee. And so I got to get your take from 15 to 25 from your time in the Congress from Louisiana.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to happen with all of the fleet of Spirit Airlines? Again, I'm not like asking for anything deep here, but as a man who knows the underbelly of the regulatory beast, what do you think is going to happen in the future of Spirit Airlines? And then also, while we're at it, just for kicks and giggles, do you think that the FAA is actually going to get air traffic control modernized sooner or later? Or are we really going to drag our feet kicking and screaming on this one?
All right, so I'll start with the second one first. I think that we're going to get the air traffic control system modernized. Congress provided nearly $20 billion in the big, beautiful bill, the reconciliation bill last summer. To begin that, it's not going to fully fund, but it's going to be a substantial down payment. I think Secretary Duffy at Department of Transportation has been great and transformative in really pushing, trying to get this implemented and get as much done as he can with the limited dollars that he has. But you've got major acquisition problems, meaning the way that the federal government contracts. By the time you get something done, usually the technology you're deploying is already outdated. So they've got to speed that up. And I think that Secretary Duffy is working on those problems as well. I think that you are going to see modernization. You're going to see better technology, more efficient, and importantly, Tony, safer. In regard to the fleet of Spirit Airlines, look, this was a wild sort of collision of events. Higher energy prices, some safety issues, some workforce and inflation issues. I mean, this was kind of a confluence of events that resulted in the Spirit Airlines problem. did Spirit Airlines going under, did it reduce the number of travelers or demand for travel? No, it didn't. Is it shifting the way that travel is happening? Yeah, it actually is. But what I think is going to happen is that you are largely going to see those planes absorbed into other airlines. There are efforts, as you may know, to try to come up with a rescue package and see if somebody can put back together or revive the Spirit Airlines model. I'll remind you, JetBlue was trying to buy Spirit Airlines during the previous administration, and that was ultimately shut down. But here's my thing, Tony. If anyone buys those planes, I've got one demand. It's that you actually allow the seats to recline. That's all. That's all I got. I don't allow. Fine.
Well, thank you very much. Excuse me, former Representative Garrett Graves of Louisiana's 6th. I couldn't help but ask you a couple of those questions because it's like, oh man, it's like having the guy who knows more about steak than anybody in front of you and not asking about beef. You know, it's just one of those things I had to get off my chest.
No, I appreciate it. Great questions, and certainly enjoy the dialogue and those things. I mean, look, the air travel thing, it's really topical right now. It's been a brutal few months, and really gotta figure out how to get more competition and capacity into the markets, and ultimately help to make it a safer, more pleasurable experience by everyone. And modernizing air traffic control, getting that additional Spirit jet fleet capacity back into the market are going to be two things that are really important and help make that experience better.
All right, so let's dive in then a little bit to the later side of the show here and talk about some of the bonus tonus stuff. I have been promising you quite a bit on the Hunter Biden situation. So let's dive right into this. The Oversight Project today released an insane report, a truly insane report. And I think we actually have it ready and set up for those of you here on the live stream to check out some of the B-roll here. So May 6th, 2025, there was a FOIA, a Freedom of Information Act response from the Department of Justice, releasing 302 pages in part, and then withholding 3 pages in full in response to the Heritage Foundation's Oversight Project's request for records related to Hunter Biden and Mann Act violations. So the central document is to an October 21st, 2020 internal email with the subject line, the Mann Act. That is 2 weeks before the presidential election. And there's a series of emails that we're looking at here, but there is one key internal email that says, the sender attached documents related to, quote, SM and solicitation, like sexual favors solicitation, and identified certain records as, quote, most probative for Mann Act purposes, end quote. And then the attachments and exhibits were organized around communications with 2 individuals labeled Trafficker 1 and Trafficker 2, along with several women described as likely escorts. Now, the Mann Act, or the White Slave Tariff Act of 1910, is a federal law which criminalizes interstate or foreign transport of individuals for prostitution, debauchery, and other immoral purposes. Originally, it was aimed at combating slavery, and it's been amended to focus on sex trafficking and forced sexual activity, with penalties up to 10 years for adults and much, much higher if a minor is involved. So why do I bring all of this up? The exhibits reference possible interstate travel, including Los Angeles International to Boston, JFK to Boston, travel to Delaware, possible New Jersey to New York travel, and the subject driving from Massachusetts to New York. A December 2018 thread places Hunter Biden at the Roxy Hotel in New York and includes messages arranging an in-person meeting at that location. This is why the Oversight Project is incredible. Mike Howell's team does the Lord's work consistently, linking up what can only be described as the same type of social media and oppo research to what individuals are around different places at different times, matching up with redacted documents that are Freedom of Information Acts. A couple of weeks before the election, it appears that the Department of Justice, knowing the election is very close, had substantial evidence to suggest that Hunter Biden was doing some interstate whoring around. Now, that is the kind of thing that were this back in 2016 between now President Trump and then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. That the Trump administration, if he was in charge, or if there was this information that came out maybe against Trump in 2016, the Obama administration would have released that in a heartbeat. And they tried everywhere and every which way. But this information was kept quiet. So there's all kinds of stuff here. There's a December 2018 exchange, including references to hourly charges of $1,000 and $10,000. And that's not a lawyer, ladies and gentlemen. Some of that language is conversational and arguably joking, but it appears that in the same broader set of messages, it involves hotel room meetings and payment discussions. January 2019 exchange places the sender in Boston and includes discussion of someone being sent payment through Cash App or wire transfer and negotiations, because, negotiating the prostitute, like in Catch Me If You Can, $3,600, $5,000, and then $9,500. Well, I sure hope they had a good time. Gee whiz. Across the records, payment methods referenced include Cash App, Zelle, wire transfer, Venmo, PayPal, and certified checks in the context of these arrangements. What's the core takeaway? Federal investigators had compiled and formally organized this evidence under explicit Mann Act framing before the 2020 election. But no charges were ever filed. It didn't release to the American public. You're just hearing about this the first time. And again, please don't take my word for it. Viewer discretion advised here. Here's some of the information that's been documented. Brianna Barty requesting $1,000. All of this information, for example, from Sex Pressure Self LLC. Hunter Biden. Again, interstate solicitation and prostitution. He was never charged with that. None of that. If you or I committed these crimes, unless we were doing it for Beijing, we would be hauled off to the Hootskow immediately. But Hunter Biden, well, And again, that was under President Trump's first term Department of Justice as it then transitioned to Joe Biden's. The father of the guy doing this alleged trafficking is Department of Justice. I know that was a long thing for the apostrophe S Department of Justice. Now, the documents do not explain why prosecutors declined to pursue Mann Act charges or reveal internal prosecutorial deliberations about that decision. The Oversight Project doesn't make any direct assertions either, but you don't need them here, guys. Come on. But you really don't need the Oversight Project or me or the documents themselves to tell you. You can actually have the individuals from the intelligence agencies, like former director of the CIA, John Brennan, openly bragged to Nicole Wallace today that there are thousands of people, he says openly, in the bureaucracy that are just happy to thwart Trump and Republicans at any given time, an army of bureaucrats. This is, again, today, Nicole Wallace, MS Now.
He has succeeded largely in turning DOJ and the FBI into political arms of his political operation. What still exists in the system to slow that down?
Well, I think, as Liz mentioned, there's still a legion of professionals in the law enforcement environment, the Department of Justice, as well as the CIA and other places, the ones who are refusing to follow politically motivated prosecutions, those who are refusing to support any type of political activities on the part of the Trump administration that are inconsistent with the authorities, the responsibilities of the intelligence community, law enforcement community, and Department of Justice.
Oh, just an army of bureaucrats. Chuck Schumer, we've appointed hundreds of justices to do whatever it is that we want. Captain, I seem to believe that is, as the legal terminology is, really, really, really stinking suspicious. But I'm sure that everything is, totally fine here. Now, for a little bit of your bonus tonus fun this evening, before we get to really just one mail time question, somebody sent in a super chat. You guys do not need to donate money to the show. You don't have to at all. But there is someone who asked a great question about the UAE. And I do want to get a chance to answer Holloway 923's question. They gave $5, really kind. Also, Lynn Blackledge gave a very kind $5 super chat. So we'll cover a little of that. But before we do, I have been waiting. Nick Fondacaro over at the Media Research Center, he subjects himself to a severe amount of torture. Now, we've said this before. Newsbusters in the Media Research Center, MRC, they are excellent. They are some of the purveyors and providers of the many clips that we use to make the receipts that we show you every evening possible. So Nick Fondacaro, who forces himself, that poor man, to watch things like The View, the reason that he has done so, and we've talked about this a fair amount, is that the ladies of The View are the cross-section of the ladies over on the left, which is one of their last two core demographics. Because Democrats have hemorrhaged everything else in their core base. They have the young radical progressives, and then they have middle-aged women on the left. Now, I've said this before, that the right and the left age very, very differently. Very, very differently. Ladies on the right and independents, they age in many different kinds of ways. Many of them age like fine wine. Many of them age like classic movies, like Lord of the Rings. Even though it's older, it just improves with age. It's excellent. All right, ladies on the left, you get one of three things. You get either, number one, the Nicole Wallace. You get the Jennifer Welch, Nicole Wallace, kind of overly Botox blonde lady. You have Pumbaa from Lion King. Or number three, you have Michael Scott from The Office with round Harry Potter glasses and gray hair. Those are your three kinds of ladies on the left, and they're represented on The View. That's who they go to. It's like Sex in the City, but more annoying and useless. So why do I bring this up? Why do we cover any of this stuff? You need to know where the arguments are going to settle for the left. So in other words, what's being spoken aloud by all of the people who don't get enough attention over on Facebook this week? Brilliant musings on redistricting, of course, as was talked about by former Representative Graves. And then, of course, the Supreme Court of the United States today. Whoopi is ready to come out and do a little bit of boxing with the Supreme Court. And her legal analysis here is just precious.
And then this happened. There was another seismic shift in voting rights last Friday after the Virginia Supreme Court struck down a redistricting map that had been approved by Virginia voters.
Well, some of them. Again, according to the Supreme Court's ruling, 1.3 million voters were disenfranchised just by this alone because they'd already cast their early voting primary ballots for this election this year. So they said, no, you can't, go through and already, so nothing about that. They're saying, oh, well, because people voted on a ballot, therefore that means it's ex cathedra.
They said, this is what we want. They came in and said, no, that's not what you want. We're changing it. So the ruling now gives Republicans a big boost as we approach the midterms.
No, it leaves the electoral map exactly the way it was. If you want to accuse Virginia Republicans of being bad, stinky people, you want to accuse Republicans of being bad, stinky people in general. Hakeem Jeffries did that today. There's a PAC, a political action committee in Texas that is just Republican and normal. And Hakeem Jeffries is out there in his half William Shatner, half Barack Obama stilted manner of calling it extreme right-wing evil MAGA, whatever. You want to get that's your prerogative? Okay, I guess. I don't think it's really going to do very much for you. But if you're on the left and you're going to go after Virginia, they didn't approve a brand new Republican redistricting map. The map just stays the same as on schedule.
And Democrats are a little pissed.
Okay. Oh, very, very special. That's not the big, huge shock and awe moment from the day that's kind of making the rounds on social media, where Whoopi and the ladies of The View made the case that, remember how, what was it? Joe Biden said you have poor kids and white kids. Well, Whoopi Goldberg, she's amplifying it, right before June and their precious Pride Month. Really, there are gay kids and rich kids. You got the LGBTQ community, and then you have the people who have money. Okay.
I'm going to say one more thing because, I know that you have very strong feelings about Democrats, but I do have this to say to you. It was important, I think, for Democrats to show that they stood with the LGBT community, that they stood with black women and women in general, because once you let us go, once you let women and poor people go, what do you have?
Yes. So this was back around Christmas. It's just now making the rounds because, again, people don't actually watch it in real time. This is back when Stephen Smith, a left-wing commentator, went on and said, you need to stop it. Not heeding the warnings, Not taking any lessons? No lessons learned?
So I've listened to lots of people say, that you didn't follow what was necessary. They did it the way they thought they could. It didn't work for them. They got it.
See, respectfully, I don't like that. Let me explain.
That's okay.
Let me explain.
Just like you said to Sonny.
Let me explain.
He sure did say that to me.
Let me
We're going to
explain.
come back. We have to take a break.
Oh, we have to take a break?
We have to come back.
Can't let Stephen A. Smith say what everyone understands, which is maybe you should stop making it about the Sherwin-Williams paint strip and the sex habits of your voters. Maybe you should just make the election based on what you can do for them. And again, there is only one single small thing, one single small teeny tiny thing that voters are looking for, and that is what you can do for them. There's one part of the Democrat Party that has actually suggested some things they can deliver. It's just higher taxes, running out of money every 4 minutes, taking away a lot of your actual God-given American rights. And then, of course, paying for everything and promising it'll be the highest quality ever. And we totally have enough money and everything for that. And we may sell out to the Chinese Communist Party. That's what the youthful progressives are promising. Are Americans going to buy it? Probably not. Probably not. So, again, we'll have to see. There are a couple of stories that we're watching that we're keeping an eye on. Again, I didn't report on a couple of things this week because I'm waiting. One would be, of course, the shooting in Massachusetts today. I'm waiting on a little bit of information there. Now, there is a measure that was advanced, filed by John Thune, that's, again, getting a little bit of coverage today. Senate Majority Leader John Thune filed a measure to advance withholding senators' paychecks in the event of a government shutdown. This is...
Mr. President, I now move to proceed to calendar number 296, I should say, SRS 526.
The clerk will report.
Counter number 296.
You know what it is. I mean, again, I just told you what it was. So, okay, sure. Americans want the Save America Act. Again, you're not going to get it. And again, do I think that Thune bears a good amount of blame with this? Yeah, absolutely. Is it all Thune's fault, though, the Save America Act isn't getting passed? No. As I've told you before, McConnell, Collins, Murkowski, and Tillis, at least. Those are the 4 senators who are on the Republican side of the aisle who are going to refuse to get rid of the filibuster, which means that you have 49 Republican votes if Rand Paul joined in nuking the filibuster, which I doubt because, he kind of whines from every time to every time. And so John Fetterman's not going to join in because it would get Republicans a bunch of policy across the board, which means you're not going to get the filibuster nuked, which means you're not going to get the Save America Act through the board. That's why. So the Senate's not really doing anything at the moment. What's the administration doing? What are Republicans actually doing? What's the oomph? What's like the stuff? Well, there's a couple of good things. First of all, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard has begun probing U.S. funding to more than 120 biolabs abroad. So the New York Post reporting on this, an excellent job. This story written over by John Christensen. It's an exclusive to the New York Post. Says, quote, Gabbard told the Post Monday in a statement that her team is going to, quote, identify where these labs are, what pathogens they contain, and what research is being conducted to end dangerous gain-of-function research, which is where you're like, how many bad viruses can we make? And then put next to paper-thin walls in untrustworthy countries. Which, as you might remember, that is the plot to not only a lot of movies about a major biohazard, but also the beginning to really dangerous superhero movies as well. I think Captain America Civil War begins with there's a major biohazard in a lab in Kenya. Who in the French frick is putting biolabs in Kenya? So Tulsi Gabbard is again, investigating all of these particular biolabs, or at least probing into U.S. funding going into them. Now, the prompt for this is not hantavirus, which again, I'm going to remind you, hantavirus is wildly overblown. It doesn't transmit human to human unless you are breathing into each other's throats or playing Democrat Senate committee orgy. If you're not doing either of those two things, you're not going to get it. Stay away from poop would be the best advice that I could give you to avoid hantavirus. And don't go to Argentine landfills. So anywho, aside from that, why is she moving forward with this? Well, because there are biolabs that are trying to utilize American resources. We talked at the very beginning of the show about 2 of the espionage indicted individuals, one of whom China appears to have sent back to the United States, who is trying to traffic a modified E. coli virus, E. coli bacteria, not a virus, from the Chinese mainland to the United States. So, again, I think that probably should get a good amount. That's a good thing from the Trump administration. Also, on the state side of things, Attorney General Ken Paxton and Senate candidate in Texas just sued Netflix for spying on Texas kids and consumers, according to him, quote, by illegally collecting users' data without their knowledge or consent, end quote. That's a very decent thing, at least as far as an attorney general doing those kind of lawsuits. That is excellent. I'm very happy to see that. I hope other states join in that particular lawsuit, and then that it's prosecuted with full attention. How data is managed, it can't be lazily done. It has to be done. If you want me to give you resources to build additional infrastructure on the tech side in the United States, you need to show yourself responsible. Now, on the Democrat side, Elizabeth Warren is really mad about more companies trying to merge. She's mad about Warner Brothers considering merging, I believe, with Paramount. And she says because we need to save the work TV show Severance on Apple TV. Can you just not? Can you just stay out of it for a minute? Companies do, in fact, go through mergers and other companies then come in. It's not a monopolistic space. Quit being stupid. So there's that side of things. There's a ton of stories that we're kind of keeping an eye on. I don't really want to dive all the way through. So with that, we'll just get through just one friendly question of mail time. Mail time. Mail time.
Mail time. On the Tony Kinnett Cast.
So, from Holloway 923, again, a very kind $4 super chat. You don't have to do that. Said, in reference to the UAE, the claim that I made regarding gas prices possibly going down, said, quote, I thought that it's a world oil market. And if the price of gas is based on the price of oil, then how does just increasing our supply through the UAE oil bring down gas? A couple of ways. First and foremost, right now, the UAE is a member of OPEC. That is the petroleum agreement, like their little micro alliance that includes Saudi Arabia and Qatar and a couple of other Gulf state nations. And they don't just drill the oil, they refine it and then sell it to the world at large. And OPEC institutes quotas, meaning that, man, if that price of oil per, the oil barrel is getting a little too low and we don't like what the United States is doing in the Middle East, then we'll just tighten that valve and institute some quotas so the Middle East is only allowed to sell so much oil at any given time. So imagine, if I'm running a supermarket, Kinnett supermarket, it's incredible. And I have decided that we are going to stock our entire store with not just Coke Zero, but Coke Zero Vanilla. Yeah, that's right. We're only selling 5 per day, though. Then the price of those 5 Coke Zero Vanilla per day is going to be pretty astronomical because the demand is still what it is for what would be the most delicious beverage known to man. However, it would not be mucho gusto given that there wouldn't be a huge supply, so the price would increase. So if the United States forms a deal that says, hey, instead of going to the world first, you're going to supply oil to the United States, no quotas, and at a reduced rate. You're going to sell oil per barrel a little cheaper, just for us, a preferred customer, one might say, a preferred partner, kind of what we're doing again with favored nations, most favored nation status regarding medical supplies, pharmaceuticals. Then yeah, you could see oil drop pretty much underneath it. Now, there's a couple of other pieces there too. Bilateral U.S. and UAE energy partnerships would excel if ExxonMobil, Occidental, others with, for example, UAE's ADNOC provide capital, technology, and expertise to say, hey, I see you drilling with 1970s oil drilling technology, but what if you watched that really cool American TV show about, pumping oil out of the ground and you learned a few things? What if ExxonMobil came in and they did that weird commercial where everyone's holding pipettes over beakers for some reason, and we taught you brand new, amazing stuff? Well, that could also lower the price of oil. Also, the United States having part of the ownership in refineries in the UAE, it's a big deal. That's a couple of reasons that would sink it. Yeah, it's a global market, but one of the ways that you excel in a global market, I can't believe I'm using this illustration. In Disney Pixar's Ratatouille, Colette explains that one of the ways that Gousseau's French restaurant is able to get the best lemons is because they bribe the grower. They say either you get the best, you get first pick of the lemons after they pick them, or you bribe the grower. And by the way, that's what USAID was supposed to be for. John F. Kennedy was supposed to use the president's own personal bribery fund. I don't like that idea. Well, if the president actually uses it for what USAID is supposed to be used for, a personal bribery fund on behalf of the State Department of the United States of America, to say you could work with China on the Belt and Road Initiative, or you could work with these United States, and instead of Russia building another canal through Guatemala, you could work with the US of A. That happened. The United States of America bribed Guatemala to not work with the Soviets who wanted to dig a Soviet Union canal. Really, really cool stuff. And again, this is foreign subterfuge and espionage on the good side. You say, well, what do you mean the good side? Espionage and diplomacy that is in the interest of the United States of America is good. Well, Tony, that doesn't really sound fair. Correct. I want the United States to do well. Screw China, screw Russia, screw the BRICS alliance of throwing your trash in the street. I want Americans to be benefited. If that means that the United States gets a better trade deal with the European Union than India gets with the European Union, awesome. I'm all for it. If the United States owning stake in the UAE means we now have a vassal state, and Emirates provides special goods for the United States in order for us to provide protection for them in the Middle East, good. I think that's awesome. If the Israelis are limited to buying from the United States, again, I think they should do that with less on the foreign aid sphere. They should be weaned off of it pretty quickly. But if they have to buy from us, excellent. Again, I think that's great. And even if China wants to buy, let's say, graphical chips from the United States, sure, you can buy graphical chips from the United States that are like 2 or 3 or 4 generations old. Absolutely. You can buy as many 2010 Chevy Tahoes you want. All of the 2010 old stock you like. Absolutely. I'm for benefiting Americans first. You say, well, I don't think that's very fair. I don't care if you think it's fair or not. I'm a Teddy Rooseveltian American imperialist. I am. And wherever American imperialism true, not nation building, not we're going to have a democracy and compassionate conservatism that ruined the foreign legacy of George H.W. Bush, where everyone plays friendship, that his son later took and allowed individuals to ruin through Iraq and Afghanistan. I don't want, no one wants that. Instead, if we do like this, the straight up United States comes in, sets things up and says, this is our territory, Greenland is U.S. territory, or Alberta, who now has enough signatures to get things over the hump for a referendum for independence. You say, but Tony, I wouldn't want all of those. Alberta, even a conservative in Canada is more liberal than a whatever here. I've heard that argument. It's a dumb argument. Being a part of the United States does not mean that you get to be a voting state in the union. You can be a non-voting territory. And there's a mail time question I'll also get to. I don't remember who it is precisely that asked this. I'll check real quick here in a hustle hurry. I know I'm breaking several rules by just checking my phone on the show, but it's useful. From Ink and Rock. Hey, Tony, what benefit would Dems derive from Puerto Rico becoming a state? So a non-voting territory allows the U.S. to use resources and allows legal residents to become citizens of the U.S., a citizen of a U.S. territory. However, if you are a state, then you get to send 2 senators. Puerto Rico is very, very liberal, and it's a really corrupt place. Puerto Rico is wildly corrupt. And again, there's a kind of poll taken from the governors of other U.S. territories. Puerto Rico is voted the most corrupt U.S. territory, and it's not even close. So adding on just like rubber stamping on Puerto Rico as a state, who, by the way, could be a state anytime they want. There's a series of rules. Again, History Matters on YouTube has a great explanation of all of the times that Puerto Rico could have just done all of the stuff required to be a state, and they have royally messed it up. The Democrats just want to ram it through and say, you don't have to do anything that Alaska and Hawaii and other states have to do. Just pat, pat, pat. You get whatever you want. Gentle parenting is garbage. You want to be a U.S. state, act like it. And for Alberta, if they want to be a U.S. state, do the stuff and kick out your liberals. And recognize that we're probably going to call you Norther Dakota. Or, as it's been most accurately described, Indiana, but for Canada. And that's not for me. That's like a little cultural analysis from, I think, 2021, which is high praise. So that said and aside, I understand there's a lot other, things to chat about this evening. There's a couple of really great questions, like what I believe the president is, trying to do here and there. There's a couple other questions I think we'll probably get to later this week. I don't want to dive in too much and waste a rest of a week's great coverage here. So that said, in the description, you'll find a couple of things. First of all, if you really like the show, if you're like, wow, this bearded guy who looks like all of the other conservative analysts and pundits, bearded dude with glasses, this very handsome man, I like the show a ton. In our description, there's a link to a podcast over on Apple. If you leave us a review over there, that really helps us out. And it also really spooks people over in the mainstream media who wonder why this show is growing so fast. That said, if you don't like it that much, but you're here, you might like the show. Hey, like the show. And subscribe. Join us tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Eastern for more of the excellent news shenanigans. And if you want to throw a question for mail time and you don't want to pay money for it, because you don't have to do that, please head over to the link to the Discord in our description, and then you can kind of hang out with us and share memes and say, wow, Tony, you're really ugly, and your Bernie Sanders impression needs lots of work. So that all said, it's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. See you tomorrow at 7. You guys, take care.